very much indeed. Thank you. Goodness me. Yes, very good. Wonderful experience. I'll just do it because I'm very nervous about the time. I don't want to go over.
That's all right. It's okay.
Is that, I'm all right? Okay.
Yeah.
Unbound. Brilliant. Amazing. People, book, print, there. It's over there. And so one of the things I've learned, I've done a few readings from the book recently, and I did one from the actual paper book in a dark bookshop, and I couldn't see it. And so this is rather glary and now sort of underlit. But it's much easier for me. So bear with me. So I'm going to read a little section from the book. This book is a unashamedly utopian vision of the future. It's set in 200 years' time in this country. This country is very different in 200 years' time in this book. And it follows the adventures of slightly nerdy, slightly emotionally repressed, slightly immature engineer who lives in a little village called Kingham in Oxfordshire with his history teacher wife. And he flies a wonderful aeroplane that I saw recently, which does exist now in real life. It's called the Unique 450E, for those of you interested in light aircraft. It is just an aeroplane with wings and a propeller, but it's electric. It doesn't use an internal combustion engine. It is an electric aeroplane with batteries. And so he flies his electric aeroplane with batteries, and it goes through some wibbly-wobbly smeg shit, as we call it in retro. You don't need to worry about that. And when he comes out the other side of that wibbly-wobbly stuff, he is 200 years in the future, in exactly the same geographical location, but very confused. A few days after his landing in this new world, he takes a wonderful old gentleman, a 136-year-old man called William, for a fly in the aeroplane, because none of the people in 200 years' time have ever flown in an aeroplane. They know what they are, but they've never been in one, because they don't exist anymore. And so that's what's happening for this part of this chapter. We flew due south for some time over endless forest, broken only by the occasional small field neatly planted with what could have been vegetables or ground fruits. There was the odd square of oilseed, an occasional field of what could have been wheat or barley. There were no towns, just houses dotted about here and there, and of course many more glass houses. At one point we flew over something that was a recognisable street with rows of old houses either side of gardens.
"That's Burford," said William. "You may recognise that."
I'd been for a pub lunch in Burford once when Beth and I, that's his history teacher wife back in 2011, had done an exploratory bike ride around Kingham. It was vaguely familiar except for the absence of traffic chugging up the hill between the houses. No road now, just gardens. After a few minutes or so, batteries still at 100%, I saw the sun glint off a river in the distance.
"Ah, Kelmscott and Old Father Thames," said William. "Let us turn to the east and follow it. There is much to see along its banks."
I was concerned about landing by this time. We'd been flying for close to 40 minutes. If the old fellow was caught short, there wasn't much I could do about it. "How are you bearing up, William?" I asked.
"I'm having the most wonderful time,"
he said without looking at me. He was staring at the ground. "Oh, I'm just a little concerned about landing somewhere. If you need, if there's a call of nature. Well, the only place I know we can land is in your field." William turned to me and smiled.
"Don't fret," he said. "I'm fine. I'm having such a wonderful time. The last thing I need is to have a wee-wee."
A wee-wee. So after 200 years of massive cultural and technological change, people still call taking a piss having a wee-wee. It was only when we passed over the bridge at Henley, again a landmark I could recognise, that I realised we'd already passed Reading, except there was no Reading, just a few farms. After another minute, something ahead caught my eye. I was vaguely scanning the horizon when my eyes just stopped, transfixed by what was before me. At first, the four lines made no sense to me, just four vertical lines in the sky, stretching from the land horizon into the misty blue. These thin lines were directly in our path, and it was only when I saw an object rising up one of the lines that I started to blink. "What in heaven's name is that?" I asked, as the object continued to rise up one of the lines. As I was speaking, another appeared out of the misty blue and descended at much the same graceful speed.
"That, my dear fellow, is Heathrow. That's what we've come to see."
As we got closer to the lines, another object started climbing up another line, a small, dark, box-like shape. "What is it?" I asked. "I just can't work it out." "Pods," said William. "The ones that look like jewels or maybe tears are passenger pods. The cuboid ones are for transporting goods, specialist goods or medicines or sometimes raw materials." I looked up as high as I could. Way, way above us, a small speck on one of the lines disappeared into the blue.
Blimey, William, this is utterly breathtaking. Where are they going?
William smiled and turned to me.
They go into space, Gavin. They go out into space.
Seriously? I gasped.
Oh, yes. Once they reach the required altitude, they essentially stay motionless while the Earth turns. When they reach their destination, they latch onto another line and then descend. It's how we travel long distances.
Oh, my Lord, I said, trying not to swear. What are the lines attached to, like solar kites?
Oh, goodness me, no, said William. No, something much larger. They're attached to geostationary satellites located about 160 kilometres above us.
Wait, I interrupted, trying to take in all this information. Satellites? So there's a satellite with a bit of string hanging from it, and the boxes climb up the string. But how did the satellite get there in the first place?
Well, before I was born, I'm not sure exactly when, you'd have to ask Paula, a very substantial rocket was sent up which carried the first tether satellite. As far as I recall, this then sent a tether back to Earth, and from then on the transportation of machines, support systems and people to work on the systems was much simplified. Now any new satellite is built on the ground in various parts, then transported into position, and the various parts are constructed into a whole, and then another line is dropped to the Earth, and so on.
So how many are there? I mean, around the world?
Oh, I've no idea. I would say a few hundred.
We were soon close enough to see some detail of the objects crawling up the tethers. The more modular shape that was in front of me was moving upwards at a gentle pace. It was soon overtaken by a slightly more cuboid shape going up one of the other lines. That was climbing into the sky about the same speed as a rocket, i.e. very bloody fast. Just extraordinary, I said, staring in awe.
The lines are around 150 kilometres long, as I recall, said William. They just crawl up the tethers. The pods have tiny hydrogen propulsion systems to steer themselves in zero gravity. You will have to add your name to the waiting list. Have a trip somewhere.
Fuck me, I spouted. Then glanced at William, a little shamefaced. Sorry, he was smiling at me.
I thought you'd like it. You see, Gavin, we no longer need rockets to break the surly bonds of Earth.
Wow, I said, finally taking my eyes off the spectacle in front of me. Do you know who said that?
Said what?
William asked. The break the surly bonds of Earth thing.
I've no idea. I must have heard it somewhere. It's quite poetic, isn't it?
Ronald Reagan, I said. He said it after a terrible rocket disaster.
Goodness, was he a poet?
I laughed. No, William, he wasn't a poet. Thank you.